The world's freshwater sources are being drained faster than they are being replenished. Water use, availability, and delivery is becoming an alarming factor in the eyes of the
This issue doesn't just belong in Australia, but it is globally renowned.
The Earth's surface contains roughly 70% of water, with 97.5% of that being seawater, which is unfit for direct human ingestion.
Fresh water takes up only the remaining 2.5%, with only 1% which is accessible, and the rest is trapped in glaciers and snowfields. Water is in extensively high demand due to the ever-growing population of the world, which is also known as urbanization, as well as the growth of agriculture and food production.
It is said that by 2025, an estimate of 1.8 billion
Will live in areas plagued by water scarcity and will be facing water shortages, with over a quarter of the population going about their day-to-day lives without the access to clean and sanitary water. In regards to management of the water levels of the world, many issues become apparent, such as water leaks and wastage, as well as poor practices. In terms of Australia as a country, we typically rely on surface or groundwater sources to meet our water needs.
This map shows the results of water levels throughout the world in 2017
from highest to lowest risks. Brian Carlisle, a subsea hydraulic engineer at Sintef Petroleum Research, reports that global water supplies are limitless as water only becomes dirty, not destroyed. Many factors need to be considered in regards to the current state of the water. Fresh water requires substantial amounts of money and energy in order to be produced. As humans see water as their basic right to living, money becomes an issue when they are told they are having to spend huge amounts in order to access it. Much of the world's fresh water is found in inconvenient places like glaciers and rainforests, but it is partially inaccessible, therefore too expensive and hard to access in order to be transported back to populated areas. Many countries also cannot afford the infrastructure that is necessary in order to clean and sanitize water, leaving 17% of the world's population unable to access this clean water. An example of this being over 700 million Chinese people that are drinking water that does not meet the standards of the World Health Organization guidelines.
The map shown provides information on the levels of water in dams in Cape Town, Australia. The x-axis shows the results from 2014 until January 2018, and the y-axis represents the levels that the dams have dropped in water collection.
Although, as a whole, the country has researched in order to improve security of our water supply since the occurrence of the Millennium Drought from 1997 to 2009. In order to improve the reliability of water in an ever-changing climate and population, many strategies have been introduced. These strategies include such sustainable practices of seawater desalination, the recycling of water, and also rainwater catchment use. It is also said that conflicts will increase when water becomes scarcer. It has been reported that since 1947, 37 conflicts have taken place between countries over water availability. Water conditions have a huge impact upon society throughout the world.
In many underprivileged communities, water pollution becomes so bad that we are seeing a devastating number of 3,900 children dying every day from these waterborne diseases, according to the World Health Organization's records. Many organizations such as WaterOrg, WaterAid, and Water is Life get involved in providing poor communities with supplies and sustainable and sanitized drinking water. Some key linkages include environmental health, which also relates to pollution, waterborne diseases, and in turn, human health. Also, agriculture, the biodiversity affected by it, and in turn, the effects waterborne diseases will have on biodiversity. There is also expenditure on resources, which relies heavily on research and therefore employment. Some indicators include the percent of population affected by disease-posed water sources, population decline in plant and animal species or biodiversity, and also
some goals in relation to sustainable management of water include the implementing of compulsory installation of rainwater tanks in housing and industrial, installation of more drainage systems in relation to water runoffs and rainwater collection routes, as well as improvement of current systems and also an increase in current housing to be switched to sustainable water practices, such as recycled water or stormwater collected from their own house rather than heavily relying on town water. By 2050, the number of people who live in urban areas of the world are expected to double, and by 2035, up to 40% of the world's population are expected to be living in water-stressed areas. With the sustainable practices that are put into place, they will need to be large enough to deal with the uncertain increasing factors of environmental, climate, and social conditions of the world, as the amount of water isn't necessarily diminishing, but the demand for water is increasing rapidly.
In relation to the credibility of sources I have researched, I found there were a wide range of opinions in regards to this subject. This made it quite hard to initially find the information I required, although with further and in-depth research, I found many trusted sources such as BOM, reports from the government, and also data from many credible experts, which I have used continuously throughout this documentary.
Prior to researching this subject, I had a strong bias on the little information I had been provided with to believe that the world is running out of water and we as a population were basically doomed and would eventually all die due to the lack of water. Now that I am currently in the midst of this subject, I see both sides. I believe that urbanization is a major factor in the future scarcity of water. I also believe that nothing will change if people don't become proactive in this area. Therefore, implementing strategies which are similar to my goals for sustainable practices will definitely help improve the world.
I now, out of habit, go home every day and make sure my taps aren't leaking. The water I do use, I used to forget about and not worry. Now I make sure I'm not wasting unnecessarily. I hope that the information that I have briefly portrayed today will help you think about the future and where we want to be and what we need to do in order to make a world better for many future generations.